Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to Off the Top Rope here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. So NXT happened tonight, really the go-home show for Great American Bash over the weekend. Some stuff happened. I still think that this show really feels like a throwaway to just counter program All in Texas and really, let's be real, as much as there's going to be some former AEW representation. Ricky Saints and Ethan Page are going to have a Falls Count Anywhere match for the North American title. Blake Monroe's making her debut, and I'll get back to that in a second because that's the reason for this video. Obviously Joe Hendry is involved with the show. NXT title defense, okay. Sol Ruka's gonna wrestle, and she's gonna do her and Izzy Dame. There's gonna be a lot of double duty because some of these women are gonna participate at Evolution, which is gonna be really cool. But really, the women again are really what carries NXT. And, the closing segment with setting up the Battle Royal, even a lot of main roster people showed up there. Stephanie Vaquero was there. Natty was there. Maxine was there. Candice LeRae showed up. Julia showed up. Zelina Vega showed up. So it was really cool how they sort of set the stage for, the Evolution and also the Battle Royal itself at Evolution. Honestly, NXT, you could make the argument NXT might have done a better job of building up this, with the exception of the Bayley, Lyra, and Becky Lynch feud. NXT might have done the best job of anything of really promoting and, kind of advancing stuff to get to Evolution because they have an NXT team. Granted, Sol Ruka and Zarya really got thrown in there at the last minute because there's no tag teams really of note in NXT on the women's side. They've been making pairs up, but it just kind of was thrown together. And then obviously the women's battle royal and then the NXT championship match. But that leads me into what I want to talk about here, because they're doing a slow build with Blake Monroe on the NXT roster, and they're seemingly setting the stage for what is going to ultimately be her first feud on the main roster. And clearly there was an indication that it's going to be against Jordynne Grace. All due respect to JC Jane, she's a transitional champion. All that this weekend is going to serve is that Jordynne Grace is going to win the championship at Evolution. I'm assuming that maybe Blake Monroe maybe gets a pin on Fallon Henley at Great American Bash in her first match there. But seemingly what we're setting the stage for is a friendly, alliance that's going to ultimately fall apart. We've already seen the rumors. Fightful Selects has reported that NXT's already considering a Blake Monroe heel turn. I understand why they debuted her as a babyface. She was the shiny new toy, but we all saw what Blake Monroe did as Mariah May in AEW. We saw how great she was as a heel. That's where this is going. I will say this. Even as cheesy and as weird as these segments were, they were fucking entertaining. This, odd couple, it gave me some AEW fans are going to get mad at me for saying this. It reminded me of the Brochacho segments involving Adam Cole and MJF from 2 years ago. Now, Jordynne Grace sets up, she's the one who works out, and she works out at the gym. She's Big Mama Pump, and she's all about fitness and everything and staying in shape. She's getting ready to work out. And Blake Monroe is like, "Hey, I'm gonna go get you my private driver, and we're gonna go get makeovers and everything." And she calls in on. She's pondering calling her on her phone. And it was a goofy little skit, but it was entertaining and it showed some character. And then Jordynne's resistant to all of this stuff. And one of my favorite things, and this has already gotten over in the NXT arena, Blake Monroe calls Jordynne Grace her muscle muffin. That's going to become a thing. I mean, I guarantee you're going to probably hear that at Center Stage on Saturday. And who knows, maybe you'll have 10,000 people in at Evolution chanting muscle muffin. But the vibe I got off of that based off that they're already laying the groundwork for this friendship between Blake Monroe, newly minted star Jordynne Grace, who's been newly minted in. And really, we've been waiting for Jordynne to get up to the main roster. I think that, basically this whole thing with JC Jane was to give a shock moment, to give a deserving talent a championship. She's been around there forever. She gets a championship. She's going to get to be on Evolution representing NXT. And then that's where I think it's going to end. There's been a couple of signs already that tell me that Jordynne Grace is going to win the championship on Sunday at Evolution, because Jordynne Grace's old rival, Masha Slamovich, who beat her for the TNA championship, it was announced next week at Slammiversary for TNA, they're doing the NXT champion, the NXT Women's Champion versus the TNA Knockouts champion, title for title. So you better believe that they're going to capitalize on possibly that. That is not to disrespect JC Jane at all, but a lot of this didn't really make any sense. It felt like just a reward for, great years of service in a women's division that has been dominant. And JC, I think, had kind of fallen by the wayside. And to be fair, Fatal Influence has been presented really well. Fallon Henley got, the North American title late last year and lost it earlier this year. I don't know. Jasmine Nix is just there. And then JC Jane gets rewarded with this NXT title run. She beats Stephanie Vaquer with a bunch of interference, but I just don't foresee her having a long title run. I think this ends at Evolution. And ultimately, I think what this does is this sets the groundwork for Blake Monroe versus Jordynne Grace. And what I like what they're doing, it's a plus and a minus thing, because you had all these women at the end of the show and Blake Monroe was nowhere to be found. Jordynne Grace was involved in it. And it seems like Blake Monroe is not going to be involved in this battle royal at Evolution, which I think is a missed opportunity, but I get it. They're trying to establish her character. They're trying to establish her on this show because she's going to be a mainstay. She's going to be the champion. I think it will happen before the end of the year. They've had a bunch of short title runs. I think this is just a means to an end, that they're just getting from point A to point B. They've rammed, really, guys, Roxanne Perez started the year as the NXT Women's Champion. Just think about this. She started the year as the NXT Women's Champion. Julia beat her, January 7th in Los Angeles at the Shrine. Then, in March, Julia loses to Stephanie Vaquer in that title for title match. Then Stephanie Vaquer, literally 2 nights after defending it at Battleground, shockingly loses to JC Jane. The 3 people that I named you are already on the main roster. Jordynne Grace, it feels like they're going to get that accolade to her and then ultimately get it on to and get it over to Blake Monroe at some point. Now, the big question could be from some of you NXT fans are wondering, well, why didn't they just have Jordynne beat Stephanie at Battleground? I don't have an answer to that question. I really don't know. That's a better question for Shawn Michaels. We may never know. But I do like that they rewarded somebody like JC Jane for it. But, based off the way that this whole thing has been told, it just tells you that this has a shelf life. And I thought maybe they were going to potentially have Blake just beat JC, but then now they've got this tag match. Now they're doing these vignettes with these two. I mean, Blake is calling Jordynne Muscle Muffin, and it's getting over with the fans. It's setting up Jordynne to win the championship, be the dominant babyface, get turned on by her friend, which, some AEW schmucks will say, man, this is a carbon copy of what they did with Toni Storm and Mariah May. And I'm like, no. And look, even if this was kind of cheesy and kind of campy with what they did, it was entertaining. It was entertaining. And I'll tell you this, man, they did in literally 2 short vignettes that they did to set this up. Like I said, this reminded me a little bit of the Brochacho stuff, which was as goofy as it was entertaining. And it showed some character, and it showed some development. Where has that been in AEW? And where the fuck has that been in this whole build for their main women's match, Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné? It's just been a bunch of, it's not even character stuff. It's just been cheap, like, hey, we're eating dinner at during people's matches. Like, I'm not saying that they need to go and maybe they'll do something here in the go home angle on Wednesday night, but Muscle Muffin. Muscle Muffin. That's getting over. Sometimes the weirdest shit can hit. So I give them credit. I'm a little bit miffed, I guess you could say, that Blake isn't just getting thrust into it. But the women's division is so deep and talented that maybe you want Blake Monroe to just get her feet wet. And Jordynne Grace, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. She deserves her moment in the sun. And if she gets a title win at Evolution, despite how I feel about the build, despite how I feel, that is a big deal. To win the NXT championship as an NXT representative on an all-women show, that means something. So, I mean, for God's sake, I think Tony Storm won the Mae Young Classic on the last Evolution. So these things mean something. And it'll be a neat little statistic, and it'll be a neat little thing to put on a resume. And JC Jane walking in as the champion, even if it's a short run, that means something to her. So I think everybody wins in this situation. And even if I would have liked for Blake Monroe to be involved at that end segment, I still think, the stuff they did throughout the show was really, really entertaining and really well done. Like I said, Muscle Muffin, that gets over. That's great stuff. All right, well, we'll see what happens at Evolution. We'll have a lot of coverage here coming on the channel. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.